Case 623 by Danny Yu. Chapter 21. The timestamp has moved another few weeks forward. The change isn't visible, not at first. The asset sits still on the bed as he should. A closer look, however, reveals the glaring difference to earlier. The pale eyes are no longer vacant, are the furthest thing from empty. He's doing the one thing he was never meant to do. He's thinking. The timestamp in the next clip has only changed by a few days, but it's a different room, still in the laboratory section of the base, but there's more equipment present. Scanners, an ultrasound machine, and a monitor. Several medical technicians are busy checking the asset over. It takes medical training or observational skills beyond the ordinary, but on the monitor, the faint shapes of two tiny embryos can be made out. The asset is still, as always, passive, but once again his gaze is alert, following everything, observing, moving about the room, and seeming to take everything in, from the movements of the technicians to the ultrasound wand and the gel on his bared, still flat stomach. It is beyond disquieting. Tony felt adrenaline pump through him, felt the desperation turn into something else, something almost feral, wholly instinctive. The only way the asshole was going to get to Jamie was if he went through Tony first, and Tony was not going to make that easy. He put Jamie down, stepped in front of him. Jamie wasn't even objecting, for all that his small hands were scrapping to hold onto Tony's pant legs. God, the kid must have been beyond frightened. Tony was too, somewhere in a corner of his mind that wasn't consumed by rage and a pure protective instinct he thought he might have only ever felt shadows of before. He would do anything, could almost believe he could do anything, so long as Jamie made it out in one piece. That was all that mattered.
Come on, Tony, loosen up,
Killian said, stepping all the way into Tony's space. Tony forced himself to remain still, to wait for the moment where he'd be able to get Jamie an opening.
It won't hurt much, and then we can discuss salary and benefit packages. I even offered childcare.
Something had changed in his voice. It was still smug, but the mock jovial tone had vanished, leaving behind something far darker. His eyes flashed fiery as embers, and that same rush of fire seemed to flicker over the skin of his face for a moment, making him look the furthest thing from human. Tony swallowed. Extremists. Killian had shot himself up with extremists. Tony wasn't getting out of this one alive. Jamie might not either, as much as that thought hurt. But Tony definitely wasn't. The certainty was alien, detached almost. It settled him, though, in some strange way, calmed him. He would do his best, and then there'd be nothing else left. He sucked in a shuddering breath, tensed his muscles in anticipation, and let them go! Tony's gaze flickered past Killian to Maya, and he'd damn near forgotten she was even here. Had forgotten how close he'd felt he'd come to getting through to her. Closer than he'd realized, it seemed.
Hold on!
Killian said.
Hold on!
The mock jovial tone and expression were back, and he actually had the gall to pat Tony's shoulder as he turned around. Tony let his eyes settle on Maya again, took in the situation completely. She had a syringe, a second syringe, and she was holding it to her own bared neck, and let the fuck in.
Maya?
Killian started. I said... Maya repeated, voice stronger now, more determined. Killian's attention seemed to be completely on her, and Tony, heart pounding, took the chance to reach back and grip Jamie's hand tight, began to edge towards the door. Let them go!
What are you doing?
Killian asked. Tony was still watching intently, doing his best not to make the faintest noise. He took another step, and Jamie copied him carefully, silently. One more step, and another. Just a few feet, and they'd reach the door. 1,200 cc's, Maya said. I was half this size and I'm dead.
It's times like this my temper gets tested sometimes,
Killian said. Thankfully, although the words were clearly aimed at Tony, he didn't turn around to pay them any attention. He was too focused on Maya, who, although she must have been able to see every step Tony and Jamie took, didn't give the thing away.
Maya, give me the injector.
If I die, Killian, Maya said. There were tears in her eyes now. They flickered at Tony for a moment, shot through with something that looked a lot like remorse. She didn't look long enough for Killian to catch on, and Tony took another step and another. He could almost reach the door handle now. What happens to your soldiers? What happens to your product?
We're not doing this,
Killian said, and his voice had picked up speed. He actually sounded agitated now. Tony wished it could have given him any kind of satisfaction. Wished he could even bring himself to care whether Maya made it or not. But none of it mattered, not next to the thought of getting Jamie out of here.
Okay, Maya?
Maya took a step back, and Killian stalked after her, still facing away, but further from the door now.
What happens to you? What happens if you go too hot?
Killian stopped advancing, and Tony filed those words, that piece of information, away for some other time, when it might be useful. Tony took the final step, cracked the door open. It made no noise. Fucking thank Thor and his dad for that one. He guided Jamie through and made to follow, and then Killian was turning to look at Tony. Tony saw the flash of panic in his eyes, and there was the gun. How the hell had Tony not seen the gun? And a ringing pop of a shot, and Maya was dead, and... Tony pushed it all away, threw himself out the door, grabbed Jamie's hand, and ran! Lifeboats. There had to be lifeboats. Or a chopper. A chopper would be really good right about now. The deck rang out with a metallic clang with each of their footfalls, and the moon was glinting on the ocean. Tony couldn't see land anywhere. And where was that helipad? Up. They'd have to go up. Even if the helipad turned out not to be up high, it would give him some kind of a vantage point, some clue, some plan that was less vague than hoping they found transportation so he wouldn't have to throw himself and his son into the fucking ocean where they were so far out he couldn't even see the coast. There was a lump somewhere in his throat that had nothing to do with exertion or shortness of breath, and right now was really not the time to be fighting down tears no matter how frightening this whole thing was. Jamie was holding up all right. Okay, he had tears trailing down his cheeks and his hand trembled in Tony's, but he was still doing as he was told, was keeping up admirably. If Jamie, not even 4 years old yet, could stay that strong, Tony damn well could too! He reached down, scooped up his son. He wasn't sure if he was trying to comfort them both or if it was an attempt to get more speed, and rushed toward the narrow metallic staircase he'd just got sight of. He heard footsteps behind him, but he wouldn't turn around to look. Keeping one arm around Jamie, he grabbed the stair rails and hauled himself up as fast as he possibly could. His breath was ragged, his pulse pounded like a drum in his ears. Jamie's small hands clutched at his shoulders, and the top of his head was digging into Tony's collarbone, and Tony was pretty sure the heat and weight of it, the need to get his son to safety, was the only thing keeping him going. When was the last time he even slept? Just a few steps left, and he'd be up top, able to finally get a proper view of the layout at the tanker. He hauled himself up, and a beam of fire crackled through the air in front of him. It was all he could do not to drop Jamie, fall right back down the stairs. As it was, he managed to turn around and shield his son with his body. He could feel the heat scorching his back, probably burning holes through the fabric of his t-shirt.
I thought that might make you reconsider,
An all too familiar, all too smug voice said. Tony looked over his shoulder at Killian. Something like embers was still visible under his skin, making him look like some terrible mythical monster.
Listen, Tony, you should be able to take it as a challenge.
There was that ugly smile on his damn mug again, there and gone again within a few moments.
Look on the bright side. I inject him and you get to save him. Or I can burn you both to crisp.
Tony could see movement off to several sides. They were surrounded, and even if it had only been Killian, Tony still might not have stood much of a chance, not without the suit, so what the hell was he supposed to do? There was no way in hell he could let Jamie be shot up with that shit. Even if Tony had almost figured it out drunk and distracted over a decade ago, even if it might help him find an opening, even if... No, there was no way in hell that was happening, and there was no way they were getting burnt to a crisp either, so what the hell was he going to do? Jamie shifted wetly against his throat, his arms tightening around Tony's neck for a moment. And then, before Tony quite registered what was going on, the kid had slithered out of his hold and was walking across the deck towards Killian. Not fearless. He was trembling, narrow shoulders held too stiffly, but so brave. And maybe Howard had a point. Way back when. Stark men were made of iron indeed, but Damascus steel for spines. All those thoughts, those smidgens of admiration crossed through Tony's mind within a fraction of a second, and then he was screaming at Jamie, damn near begging him to come back. He launched himself after the boy, but another beam of flame blocked his path, and he had no choice but to throw himself back.
What's it like to know your kid is smarter than you?
Killian asked. His hand was tight around Jamie's arm, and Jamie still held his head high, shoulders squared, and Tony was proud, so damn proud. And so frightened he thought the reactor would give out on him. Jamie's tiny fists clenched. "Daddy will save me," he said, and his voice shook, and Tony wanted nothing but to hold him and never let go. God, why couldn't he act his age for once in his short life? The flames dissipated, and Tony was lurching forward again, except there were hands now on his arms and shoulders holding him back. He was vaguely aware of the heat burning through the fabric of his clothes, scorching his skin. He couldn't feel it, couldn't feel anything other than rage and bone-deep fear when he realized he was never in a million years going to be able to break those grips. He could do nothing but watch as Killian brandished the syringe once more, stabbed it into Jamie's neck. He pulled the plunger, and Tony's old world stopped.